Okay, let's dive in. Imagine this. You're walking, maybe down a dusty road, and you see an old red bicycle, just abandoned.
Right.
Maybe the front wheel's a bit bent, one pedal's missing altogether, the paint's faded. It's just sitting there.
Mm-hmm. That image, it really sticks with you.
It does. And, that simple picture, if you let it sink in, can actually tell us quite a bit about things we carry around. These residues of childhood.
That's a great way to put it, residues. And the abandonment aspect is fascinating, isn't it? What parts of ourselves do we sort of leave behind?
Exactly. In that rush to become adults. Maybe the playful parts, the less serious bits.
Things we decide don't fit the grown-up mold anymore.
And how you often find them, right?
Right.
Tipped over, handlebars all crooked, that wheel pointing off somewhere.
Yeah.
It feels like that internal conflict we all have, that kid-like desire for just fun and exploring.
The pleasure principle, you could say?
Right. Constantly hitting up against the reality principle, responsibilities, rules. The bike looks like it wants to roll, but it just can't. It's stuck.
Precisely. And that missing pedal you mentioned, that's powerful.
It feels significant.
It really does. Pedals mean movement, progress. So if one's missing, it suggests something fundamental holding you back. Maybe not getting that vital support or approval early on.
Like not feeling seen, maybe.
Exactly, not feeling valued. And that then makes it harder, unconsciously, to push forward in adult life. It's not just gone. It feels like it was broken off or maybe lost during a struggle.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, it can mirror those times when a kid tries something, takes initiative, and it's shot down or fails, leaves this kind of hesitation later on.
So it's more than just like a sad object by the road.
Yeah.
Seeing it can stir things up, can't it? Unexpectedly.
Definitely.
Maybe a flicker of nostalgia or sudden sadness, or even weirdly, annoyance.
Yes. And that's the projection, isn't it? We're layering our own inner stuff, our unresolved bits onto this random bike.
Our own childhood baggage just surfacing.
And it makes you wonder why that image, why something seemingly so ordinary can hit so hard. It connects to that psychoanalytic idea. Screen memories.
Screen memories.
Yeah, where a seemingly minor detail, like the bike, actually stands in for something much bigger, emotionally charged, something deeper we've pushed away.
So the bike isn't just a bike. It could represent what? The fear when you first took the training wheels off.
Or maybe being left behind by older kids, that sting of being excluded, things like that.
Wow. And the state it's in, not totally destroyed, but definitely broken, not usable.
That perfectly mirrors how these childhood complexes often exist within us. They're not neat, clear memories, more like fragments, impressions.
But they still shape how we act, even if we don't realize it.
Absolutely. Unconsciously. And these points where things got stuck are often called fixation points.
Fixation points.
The bike could symbolize one of those moments, maybe where development was interrupted, like being forced to grow too fast.
Or the opposite, maybe. Not having enough freedom to just explore and be a kid.
Exactly. Either extreme can create a kind of developmental snag.
You almost feel it physically sometimes. Just picturing that bike, maybe your shoulders tense up a bit, or your stomach tightens.
Yes. That somatic response. It's like the body remembers, holds on to that blocked energy from childhood.
Yeah.
An image can just trigger it.
Like a little clue from your body.
A very important clue. And think about the weathered seat on that bike.
Yeah, worn down by time and weather.
It speaks to how persistent these childhood patterns are. Our adult lives might look totally different on the surface. Maybe we're successful, financially stable.
But underneath.
Underneath, that old pattern persists. Like someone who still hoards things despite having plenty of money, maybe rooted in early insecurity.
Right.
Or constantly seeking attention, even when they have genuine connections, echoing an old need to be seen. The pattern remains, like that worn seat.
And the fact it's just there, by the road, not hidden.
Right. It suggests these experiences travel with us. They're not locked away in the past. They influence the road we take now, how we handle the bumps.
They're part of the journey.
They are. And the public nature of it being abandoned, that can touch on feelings of shame, maybe? Exposure.
Like vulnerable parts of ourselves left out in the open.
Exactly. Parts that maybe weren't protected or cared for properly back then. We might try to walk past, ignore it, like people ignoring the bike. But it's still there, shaping our inner world.
So if we connect this to some broader psychological ideas, this feels like repression, doesn't it? Something useful, functional, becoming broken and pushed aside, like memories we can't face.
Very much so, and you could even see a connection to sublimation.
How so?
Well, maybe the original owner moved on, got a car, perhaps, a more mature, socially acceptable way to get around.
All right.
But that underlying need for movement, independence, it's still there. It's just channeled differently, sublimated into a different form.
So the core impulse finds a new outlet.
Precisely. But the crucial thing, really, is your emotional reaction to that image of the bike.
What you personally feel when you see it.
Yes. Is it loss? Regret? Maybe even relief? That feeling is like a little window into your own relationship with your childhood. What's resolved and what's still echoes.
What still has a charge.
Exactly. So this whole image, the abandoned red bicycle, it's just a really powerful metaphor, isn't it? For how these early experiences, these residues, keep influencing us as adults, creating patterns that seem irrational on the surface.
But when you dig down,
The roots often lead right back to those early days. It's like the unconscious telling a story, using these symbols to shield us, maybe, from something more overwhelming.
that makes a lot of sense. So how does this actually play out in someone's life, these unconscious patterns?
Well, let's imagine someone, a composite figure. We can call her Sarah. Let's say Sarah is in her late 30s and she keeps finding herself in similar kinds of relationships.
Okay.
She's drawn to partners who, in subtle ways, remind her of her father, maybe emotionally distant, and perhaps also echo her mother, who might have been quite critical.
So she keeps picking the same type, essentially.
It feels like that, but it's often deeper. It's what psychoanalysis calls the repetition compulsion, an unconscious drive to replay those early, often difficult family dynamics.
Why? Why would someone unconsciously want to repeat something painful?
It's complex. It's partly an attempt to master the old situation, perhaps, to finally get it right this time, to get the love or approval that was missing.
Like trying to fix that old broken bicycle, but using new relationships as the tools?
That's a perfect analogy. Trying to fix the bent wheel in the present, but the original damage, the childhood experience, hasn't actually been addressed or understood, so she ends up back by that dusty roadside, emotionally speaking.
Playing out the same script, just with different people.
Exactly. And these patterns are usually protected, kept in place by defense mechanisms.
Yeah, okay. Defenses. Like what?
Well, for Sarah, a common one might be intellectualization. When difficult feelings come up in a relationship, vulnerability, fear, hurt instead of feeling them.
She analyzes them.
Precisely. She steps back, dissects her partner's behavior, maybe discusses the psychology of the situation with friends, but all with a kind of detached coolness.
Like building a wall of logic around the feelings.
Yes. It keeps the raw emotion contained, manageable, but of course it also prevents real emotional intimacy. You ever notice that? Someone explains their feelings endlessly, but you sense they aren't actually in them.
Yeah, definitely. It creates distance. So it protects her, but also isolates her.
That's the trade-off. And then there's transference. This is huge in relationships.
Okay, what's that exactly?
Sarah isn't just seeing her current partner as they are right now. She's unconsciously overlaying templates from her past onto them, especially parental figures.
So if her boyfriend is quiet one evening,
She might instantly feel it as rejection, interpreting it through the lens of her distant father, even if he's just tired or preoccupied. The past colors the present perception.
like wearing old glasses that distort things.
That's a great way to think of it. And when these patterns, these defenses get pointed out, maybe in therapy or by a perceptive friend, you often encounter resistance.
People push back.
Oh, yes. Sarah might rationalize, I just prefer independent partners. Or minimize, this is not a big deal, all couples argue. Maybe use humor to deflect.
Why the resistance?
Because there's a lot of psychic energy invested in keeping those patterns going. They might be painful, but they're familiar. They serve a purpose, usually managing underlying anxiety rooted in those childhood experiences. The resistance shows you where the sensitive spots are.
And repression must be involved here too, right? Pushing things down.
Absolutely central. Certain memories, maybe feelings of disappointment or specific instances of unmet needs from childhood,
Yeah.
they get pushed out of conscious awareness.
Like stuffing things in a basement, like you said earlier.
Exactly like that. You can't see them, but they're still down there, affecting the house. Sarah might not consciously remember specific times she felt ignored by her father.
But the feeling lingers.
The feeling lingers, and it manifests in adult life, maybe as that deep fear of abandonment she struggles with, or a constant need for validation in her relationships. Repressed material doesn't just vanish, it finds other ways out. often through symptoms.
Symptoms.
Yeah.
Like the headaches you mentioned earlier, when things get intimate.
Yes, that's a classic example of symptom formation as a compromise. Part of her wants closeness, intimacy. Another part, likely rooted in past experiences, fears vulnerability or perhaps criticism associated with closeness. The headache becomes the body's way of saying no, a compromise between conflicting desires.
Wow. The body keeps the score, as they say.
It really does, and projection is another key player.
Seeing your own stuff in someone else.
Pretty much. Sarah might feel deeply inadequate or insecure herself, but finds it too painful to acknowledge. So, unconsciously, she projects those feelings onto her partner. She starts believing he's the one who finds her lacking, or he's the critical one.
So she criticizes him for the very thing she fears in herself.
Often, yes, it externalizes the internal conflict, but obviously creates major problems in the relationship.
Right. And what about reaction formation? That sounds like doing the opposite.
It is behaving outwardly in a way that's the exact opposite of a true, often unacceptable, unconscious feeling. Sarah might project this image of fierce independence. I don't need anyone.
But deep down,
There might be a profound yearning for connection, dependency, care, but that need feels too vulnerable, maybe too shameful, based on early experiences. So the exaggerated independence becomes a shield.
a mask.
A very effective mask, often. And then, under stress, we sometimes see regression.
Go back to older ways of coping.
Yes. Sarah might find herself reaching for comfort foods she loved as a child, or maybe even twiddling her thumb when anxious, or feeling intensely homesick even when she's in her own home. It's like the adult coping strategies get overwhelmed, and these earlier, less mature patterns emerge.
Little glimpses of the child within.
Exactly. They're signals, pointing back to unresolved needs from earlier stages, and related to that is displacement.
Taking it out on someone else.
Essentially, yes. Sarah might feel angry or frustrated with a parent, or even her partner reflecting a parental figure, but expressing that anger feels too dangerous. So she redirects it onto a safer target, a colleague, a customer service rep.
The feeling gets expressed, but not towards the actual source.
Correct. It finds an outlet, but the core issue remains untouched.
But can these early drives ever lead to something positive? You mentioned sublimation earlier, with the bike owner getting a car. How does that work for someone like Sarah?
Oh, absolutely. Sublimation is when the psyche channels potentially problematic impulses or desires into something socially acceptable, even valuable. Sarah's intense ambition, her drive to succeed professionally,
Yeah.
that could be in part a sublimated expression of her childhood, longing for her parents' approval and recognition. Striving for success becomes a more mature, socially rewarded way to seek that validation she might have missed.
So it's not necessarily bad, but the root is still in that early experience.
Precisely. Understanding the root doesn't negate the achievement, but it adds depth to understanding the motivation. Now, a trickier one is identification with the aggressor.
That sounds ominous.
It can be a tough dynamic. In Sarah's case, she might find herself adopting some of her critical mother's attitudes, being overly critical of herself or judgmental of others in ways that echo her mother.
Why would someone do that? Identify with the person who hurt them.
It's often an unconscious strategy to gain a sense of control. If you internalize the critical voice, it feels less like an external attack and more like part of you. It's a complex way of managing the original pain, almost by becoming it.
Wow. Taking the criticism inside and splitting. That's the black and white thinking, right?
Yes, seeing people or situations as all good or all bad. It's a more primitive defense, often seen when emotions feel overwhelming. Sarah might idealize a new partner. Initially, they're perfect.
Until they're not.
Exactly. Then, at the first sign of imperfection or disappointment, she might flip completely, devaluing them entirely, all bad. There's no room for nuance, for holding both good and bad qualities simultaneously.
Like an emotional light switch. On or off.
Yeah.
What about plain old denial? Just refusing to see it.
Denial operates on many levels. Sarah might consciously insist her childhood was fine, or that her past doesn't affect her relationships now. Or it might be more unconscious, a fundamental blind spot to how these patterns are playing out.
Maintaining the narrative that I'm different or it doesn't matter anymore.
Right. Even when the evidence, maybe to others, seems quite clear, it's a powerful way to avoid painful truths.
And suppression. How's that different from repression?
Suppression is more conscious. Repression is largely unconscious, forgetting or pushing away. Suppression is actively, consciously trying not to think about something uncomfortable.
Like pushing a thought away deliberately.
Yes. Sarah might actively push away thoughts about her parents' flaws or worries about her relationship. It offers temporary relief, but the underlying issue usually persists.
And this counterphobic attitude,
Yeah,
seeking out what you fear, that seems so counterintuitive.
it really does. But it's about unconsciously being drawn to situations that trigger the core fear. Sarah, fearing emotional distance and abandonment.
Finds herself drawn to emotionally unavailable partners.
Repeatedly, it's like an unconscious attempt to master the fear by confronting it head on, again and again. But because the underlying dynamic isn't understood, it just leads to re-experiencing the pain, not resolving it.
Like picking at a scab and undoing. What's that about?
Undoing is like trying to magically cancel out a thought or action that causes anxiety or guilt. Sarah might be compulsively apologetic even for tiny things, or feel this urge to constantly make things right.
As if the apology or action can erase the underlying feeling.
Exactly. It's a symbolic attempt to negate the feared outcome, rejection, disapproval, often rooted in those early experiences where maybe she felt powerless to fix things with her parents.
Trying to repair the past in the present, symbolically. And finally, isolation of effect.
That's when someone talks about very difficult, potentially traumatic experiences, but with a noticeable lack of emotion.
Like telling a story completely flatly.
Yes. Sarah might recount a painful childhood memory with calmness, detachment. The facts are there, but the feeling associated with the facts seems disconnected, isolated. It's a way to manage overwhelming emotion, especially close to trauma, but long-term, it prevents full processing.
So all of these, intellectualization, projection, denial, splitting, they aren't just random quirks.
Not at all. They form an intricate, interconnected system, a network of defenses the psyche builds, usually starting in childhood, to cope, to maintain balance, to protect against overwhelming anxiety or pain.
Even if those same defenses cause problems later in life?
That's the paradox. They were adaptive then, perhaps, but maybe maladaptive now. Recognizing these patterns, understanding how they work in ourselves, that's the first absolutely crucial step.
Towards what? Integration?
Towards integration, yes. Towards connecting the dots between current feelings, behaviors, relationship patterns, and those formative early experiences. Seeing the function the defense served.
And once you see it?
Once you see it, really understand it, you begin to have a choice. You're less compelled by the unconscious repetition. You can start to develop more conscious, more adaptive ways of responding to the world and to relationships. It really shows you how resilient these childhood complexes are, but also
The potential for change?
absolutely the profound potential for real transformation once you bring awareness to these deep hidden patterns.